expectations are for the pharma sector in Union Budget 2022. We are now joined by Antony Prashant, the partner at Deloitte, to tell us more about that. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon. Well, if in the last 2 years we have learned anything from the wake of COVID, is that the need of a strong public infrastructure in terms of healthcare. What's your expectation of Union Budget 2022? What can be the key focus areas of the government?
So if you look at some of the expectations and the focus areas that we expect from this budget is, and if you look at the pharma industry, it's expected to reach USD 130 billion by 2030. And generics would continue to be the main forte for this industry. But what should be noted is novel drugs, including biologics, biosimilars, needs to contribute in a very significant manner to achieve this milestone. And therefore, for the budget, what we expect this year at least is a research-linked incentive that can provide impetus to the industry. And this is where you also have the public-private partnerships coming in together to invest in R&D and need to create an ecosystem which will enable co-innovation. And more importantly, these research-linked incentives should not only be built on input parameters such as R&D spend or employment, need to focus on output-based parameters. Let's say how many patents are being filed, what are the new drug filings. So this is one area that the pharma sector is looking at. And thirdly, what we need to do is, in terms of infrastructure development, is we need to bridge the urban-rural gap, especially in terms of availability of health infrastructure, equipment, and personnel. The Ayushman Bharat scheme is becoming a success, but then we need to improve healthcare funding through subsidized loans, allocating lands for new hospitals, especially in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And this is where this will also encourage more private hospitals participation in the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And therefore, the public-private partnership is a very key dimension to ensure these dimensions are addressed.
When we just talk about the healthcare space, last year, of course, it was about vaccine, providing for vaccine. How do they give COVID-related drugs to people? You think this year it will be more of, health infrastructure rather than only about vaccines, because that sort of savings may actually come down on the books of government?
Right. So this year, where we see, if you look at some of the trends for the coming year, and also especially learnings from the pandemic, both in terms of how we have handled it as well as vaccine. Health infrastructure enabled by digital is going to become a very key aspect for this year, because if you look at the adoption of technology, or let's say dimensions like artificial intelligence, it's still nascent, but today we see a lot of technology companies and startups looking at how do we use these dimensions of digital to do predictive analytics as well as early diagnosis. So which means you'll have to create a larger ecosystem. It needs the hospitals, the diagnostic labs, the pharmacies all coming together. So we need to create the ecosystem which is going to be enabled by digital. And therefore, in line with the National Digital Health Mission, we need to build more on the health infrastructure enabled by digital, because that's going to be a big trend that we see in the coming years, especially when we are moving towards virtual healthcare and reaching to a larger population of the country.
Well, yes, there's definitely a need of creating this ecosystem for the healthcare industry as well as the pharma space. But one of the ask or one of the chatter on the street is regarding increasing the limits of FDI for the sector. And pharma has definitely emerged as one of those export hubs, whether in terms of the generic medicines, etc. What is your take that can be done in terms of increasing the foreign fund flows and the technical know-how into the country?
So like I mentioned earlier, most our industry is predominantly a generics focused industry, and where the big play is going to be in biologics and biosimilars, which means a lot of research has to come out of India. And when we talk about research, if you have to attract, just to give you a number, if you take the top 25, 30 global pharma companies in the world, they account for at least 50 to 60% of the global pharma industry output, which is roughly around 1.3 to 1.5 trillion dollars. Now, if we need to attract those companies into India and also use India as a research hub, which will bring in more investments into the country, that is looking at India for India and India for global, that's where the research linked incentive is going to make a big provide a big impetus to the industry. So the research linked incentive is going to enable also a lot of fund flow into the country from this sector perspective, especially from the global giants as well.
Hey, Anthony.